Hello, hello. I had a busy, fulfilling day. I was actually having a conversation with Jamie on her podcast earlier today. And then Eric and I were getting the house ready because his parents flew in from Sweden today. They arrived in Miami overnight, and we'll be seeing them tomorrow for a week. We haven't seen them here since, what was it? March? Yeah, March of 2025. So that will be fun. And then the last time we saw them was this past summer when we were in Sweden. All right, so I'm going to dive right in. I am going to attempt to make this episode as brief as possible because I know you are all very busy and I can talk a lot. So let me cut right to the chase. I want to talk about night training, just a few themes in regard to nighttime potty training that are particularly top of mind for me after I've done some reflections on historical context, our culture, like the fast-paced, ever-changing nature of our culture and the conveniences that come into play and the trade-offs that we make in exchange for these conveniences, and just some buzzwords and myths that have developed as a result. And I want to just set the record straight. So before I do that, I am going to read off a few very nice client testimonials in regard to night training. So somebody said, "Hey mama, hope you had safe travels. Just wanted to update you. We had 2 successful dream pees last night at midnight and 4 a.m. No accidents." I collect testimonials here always with consent. I like to have a little folder, and I am just seeing the night one specifically. Okay, so this one says first nap, diaper free, no accident. I know there will be some, but still a proud moment. And then the next one says, "Thank you so much, Kat, for the advice with night training. Our eldest son at age 2. You gave us some really helpful advice when we felt lack of progress due to illness in the house. With just a few small pointers, we have been consistently dry for over a week. Amazing that this is possible with the 2-year-old so quickly. This is clearly a passion for you, and I loved that you supported us in a holistic way that fits with our lifestyle and goals." All right, so I love hearing these stories from clients. So, and it just gives me more motivation and inspires me to help guide other moms when it comes to night training, because a lot of the times moms have day training down pat. It's going great, but they're given misguided advice from really well-intentioned and well-educated pediatricians. But we do have to remember that pediatricians are generalists, right? They're not niche specialists, and especially if you're seeing a pediatrician on an insurance panel, they're not going to have the time to give you an hour. They may be young and fresh out of school too, and maybe they aren't parents yet. So they aren't quite sure what the biological night training protocol is. And odds are, if you are a mom listening to this podcast, you are already questioning a lot of things when it comes to mainstream practices and anything in mainstream medicine. And we moms tend to prefer to look to the past to see what was working really well. We know that with modern technology and shortcuts and conveniences, a lot of these ecological and biological processes have been disrupted. And while these short-term conveniences can feel good, they can have some longer-term consequences, like having even though it has been totally normalized, and the concerns are dismissed typically by pediatricians, but having a much older child, let's say who's over 4, in a nighttime pull-up and soaking that pull-up can lead to, self-esteem issues. It can be difficult if that child's put in a situation where there's a sleepover with friends or family. And the great news is, regardless of whether this is your current reality, dealing with bedwetting, or your child is soaking an overnight pull-up, you actually do have agency. You have more agency than you're led to believe, which I always think is a good thing, because it means that we don't have to exclusively leave the process of waking up dry up to buzzword number 1, or acronym ADH, or the antidiuretic hormone. So this gets thrown around a lot. And basically the core claim of the myth is that night dryness is purely hormonal. Kids can't stay dry at night until their brain produces enough ADH or vasopressin, and you can't teach it. This is not true. And I'm telling you this is not true as a mom of two. My daughter started waking up dry, I want to say just before her first birthday. We've been practicing EC since birth every day. My son, who I only very scarcely, intermittently practiced EC with him, definitely wasn't consistent about it, but we day trained him at 20 months old, night trained him at 21 months, had to do some troubleshooting because I didn't quite do it the way that I teach my clients today, which is really the optimal way, the way I was certified in. So I had to do some troubleshooting. It took me a little bit longer, but we managed to get him night trained before he was 2. So I know this is not strictly hormonal. Now, let's talk about what ADH does do and then what it doesn't do. So the antidiuretic hormone, it does reduce urine production at night. It does follow a circadian rhythm that does strengthen over time, but it's not a simple like on and off switch. I'll make an analogy. In the mainstream model, they want us women to believe that the day we turn 35, we're like infertile, and even if we're in great health and we take care of ourselves and no outstanding conditions, and it's automatically risky to even try to have kids, okay? We know that's not how it works. It's not an on-off switch. These things gradually change over time, and there really isn't necessarily a set age. Okay, so night dryness, think of it as like a two-way street. At first, in the beginning, when we're actively night training, which does go against the mainstream model where they're telling us to just wait and see. Or I had a client whose doctor told her, and I mean, this happens all the time, like they'll grow out of it. You know, they'll grow out of bedwetting or soaking the pull-up in their own time. The problem is they don't always grow out of it. Many kids will. Many kids, especially if they're having success with consolidating pee during the day, they will grow out of soaking that overnight pull-up or bedwetting, usually by 3.5. But if your child is, let's just call it 3.5, definitely older 3.5, and still soaking the pull-up, that is when we do need to intervene and take action. And this doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be big. We just need to guide them in the same way we guide them through other learned skills in parenting. So what I found was interesting is cross-culturally, like, you know, me, I always like to look to what traditional cultures have always done, what our hunter-gatherer predecessors have done. And cultures who do practice bed sharing and they do practice elimination communication do report earlier night dryness. However, this is not necessarily bad news. Like, you don't have to feel bad if you've never done EC or your child has been in their own room since day one. Well, hopefully not since day one. That would be way too early. But, you know, since a young age, you don't have to worry. There's still a way. There's still a way. I found some dates interesting in regard to like recent cultural and historical context. You know, in the potty training episodes that we've done in the past, we talked about like in 1962 how Pampers came out with the first ever disposable diaper, and it was all paper, right? That we're talking about daytime diapers for babies. But why don't we talk about what happened as early as 1994? When Kimberly-Clark came out with Good Nights, Goodnites. This was the first ever nighttime bedwetting underwear. So that was in 1994. Jump to 2006, and Kimberly-Clark came out with the Pull-Ups Nighttime Overnight Absorbent Training Pant. Okay, so then just 2 years after that, in 2008, Procter & Gamble, aka Pampers, came out with Under Jams, bedwetting pull-ons. And if you want to know the sizes and the weight limits involved in these, we're talking they go up to like double XL, more pounds than I weigh. Okay, I am petite. I'm not tiny, but I'm petite. And a grown child, so really like maybe a teenage boy, is able to access at like a mainstream chain big box store, bedwetting overnight pull-ups. This is a modern invention because it's solving a modern problem, which is, again, I'm really going to try to keep this episode short, so I'm not going to be able to go down into really granular detail in this episode like I normally like to do. I'm just trying to give you the high-level landscape. But really, one of the truthful components here is you have third wave feminism. So women full-time in the workforce outside of the home, coming home understandably tired, but they also have another full-time job on top of their full-time job outside of the home, which is being a mom and all the responsibilities that come with being a mom and taking care of the home, unless, of course, everything is outsourced and then there's less to do there. But you're still a mom, even if you outsource all chores, housekeeping, everything, right? So what once was a rite of passage in childhood, like waking up dry, that was led, it was an initiative that was parent-led, has become like, well, I can't tend to this, right? Because I'm too tired, I need my sleep. And I'm not saying that sleep will be broken. Nobody's saying that we're going to wake your child up so that they're conscious in the middle of the night. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But night training, even though it's a specific process, it's actually probably, it's like simple but not easy, because it really is simple. It's not rocket science, but you just have to be consistent, right? It's not about throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. It's not like, well, we tried limiting liquids, or, well, we removed the pull-up. It's not just one thing. A lot of it is timing, and it's actually a few different things combined. And it is really cool to see how well this process works, and that we can defy what mainstream pediatricians are saying, which is, don't worry, mom, they'll grow out of it. Just give it some time. Maybe you're a mom who doesn't want a 6-year-old in a pull-up, right? This is not about mom shaming, like, once again, because moms have been given bad modern advice. I do think that pediatricians, and again, this is not from all pediatricians, but I do think that pediatricians are coming from a good place. Their goal is not to make you feel more stressed out or overburdened than you already are, right? But what if I told you that this process, it doesn't have to be burdensome for you or your child, right? There's just a few tweaks we're going to make, some mindset shifts, as well as lifestyle shifts too. So yeah, what was going on by the late 20th century? We talked about that timeline with Kimberly-Clark and Procter & Gamble launching Good Nights, pull-ups nighttime, overnight absorbent training pants, and underjams, spanning from 94 to 2008. In the late 20th century, right, we have kids who are day trained later. Daytime training success can impact how a kid is doing at night. Back in the day, though, our ancestors going a couple generations back, before the daytime disposable diaper, there was no such thing as day training versus nights and naps. It was all in one fell swoop, which I found really interesting. Okay, so also by the late 20th century, parents are literally advised not to intervene. Don't lead this process. Don't even try. Don't even try. And then you really have two overworked, overburdened parents who understandably have less of a tolerance for doing tons of loads of laundry, any sort of disruption to a sleep routine, right? But this can be proactively significantly mitigated. It's not a perfect process, but it can be mitigated. So if you want the exact process to get your little one out of an overnight pull-up, and you don't want to wait around for years to see whether or when they're going to start waking up dry on their own, I'm talking like well into primary school, then you have to join me because I am running for the first time ever a small group coaching container called No Nonsense Night Training. It's going to be for 4 weeks and we start Monday, February 9th. I would love to help guide you through this process. I'm only taking on a select few number of moms. Ideally, your child will be about at least 2.5 to 3 years old. Certainly older works. And I will have all the information in the show notes. So be sure to register. The first 15 moms who register will get 1 month of complimentary access. So a 1 month free trial of my private community, Moms Off the Record, the Collective, formerly Rebellious. Which I've never actually extended before. And this is a place for deeper support across a whole variety of topics, not limited to night training. But this is going to be really fun. I am so excited to kick off this small group coaching container specific to night training. We're going to use a combination of Voxer because it is private, convenient, and personal, plus weekly live Zoom coaching sessions led by me. And we're going to do all sorts of fine tuning and troubleshooting since every child is unique and has different sleep dispositions, which can affect the night training process. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me, momsofftherecordpod@gmail.com. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you there. If you have a mom friend or a mom relative in mind who has a little one who would benefit from this and who's committed to learning this process, please share the episode or the link with more information to that mom. I would so appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in. See you guys soon.